Hi there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and I'm not going to beat around the bush because this video is already 548 hours long. Here are more than 60 reasons as to why Amazon's Wheel of Time exasperates me and is the dumbest thing ever. Number 1. Men born with great power believed they could cage darkness itself. The arrogance. Luz Therin Telemon's plan was formed in desperation, and doubtless would have worked had he a consensus and seen it through with a proper circle of male and female. It wasn't a problem born of men's arrogance. There was a balance and equality for the most part between the sexes in the Age of Legend. Now you can somewhat, maybe, put this down to Moiraine being an unreliable narrator, but that's how you open your show and you're already bringing this into it? Number 2. When they failed, the seas boiled, the mountains were swallowed up. Well, technically they didn't fail. What were they trying to do? They were trying to seal the Dark One. What did they do? They sealed the Dark One. And what was the Kalamdan University who bored into the Dark One's prison in the first place? Who was that research team led by? Primarily, Lanfear, who's not a man. But, Moiraine probably didn't know that. She, I guess, doesn't seem to know very much of anything, so why is she narrating and giving the viewer information that they should be needing to know? If you start Lord of the Rings with Galadriel giving a really bad narration that's inaccurate, that doesn't really help your storytelling experience. It was the Dark One's counterstroke when they sealed him away with their incomplete circle, you might call it, that put the taint on saidin. And that taint drove them insane, and they destroyed the world. So yes, you can put this up to Moiraine's ignorance. If they had actually failed, as Moiraine is saying here, the Dark One would be free and there would be no Wheel of Time series, because he, well, would have won. Number 3. We don't know if he was a boy or a girl. Pointless mystery that serves no purpose other than to try and make the viewer guess who the dragon is. Making that such a large focus of the first season detracts from what makes the first book interesting. They just wanted some cheap mystery box. It was never a focus of the original, for good reason. Such a baffling change here. Number 4. Liandrin, not Elida, who originally I wrote Elida for some reason. I guess in my mind they kind of fused together a little bit. But yeah, Liandrin chasing men. Overly dramatic horse chase. Why does she blow up a mountain, basically, instead of using air to hold them in place? Of course, you might argue that she didn't use earth to blow up the mountain, and most women are not as strong in earth as men are, and likewise men are not as strong as in water as women are. But either way, yeah, maybe she used air to blow up the mountain, but why not just use air? This scene would have been much better had it been in the vein of, for example, Inglourious Bastards intro scene. As is, there's no tension, there's no point to the action, if you can call it that, and ultimately, it isn't a necessary scene, as we'll get plenty of good examples of what the Red Ajah do to men who can channel later on, with Tom Merrilin's story, for one example. But she's needlessly antagonistic, and her notion that the power is meant only for women doesn't really make sense. She's arguing that half of the one power shouldn't exist, or that she should be able to use saidin? I get that, Liandrin's not exactly a nice person, and the Red Ajah in general are pretty weird. Gentling the unfortunate man on the spot also just makes the Red Ajah look like secret police or executioners, instead of performing an important duty. That's the thing about the Red Ajah. Yes, a lot of them are kind of unpleasant people, but what they are doing is ostensibly important, even if it has unforeseen consequences in some ways. Are you meant to think that they're just evil, or are you meant to think that's like a cool girl power moment? I don't know. The tone is bad. Number 5. There are rumours of 4 ta'veren in the Two Rivers. What? How does an isolated village that has virtually no one going there for the most part, have rumours of Targaryen when none of them displayed any signs of being Targaryen. Making Nynaeve and Egwene Targaryen is a stupid addition. The writers seem to think that Targaryen just means chosen one or something cool, instead of somebody who warps the pattern around them unintentionally. And of course, they probably think that, oh, well, it has to be something to do with maybe one of them is the dragon. So they think, oh, well, if they can maybe be the dragon, then maybe they have to be Targaryen as well. They never display any signs of being Targaryen in the show, but they don't want people to think that the female characters are less important, and thought that's the best way to show it, tying into their stupid mystery box of who's the dragon. Number 6. I don't quite understand why they dunk Egwene in the river, because it has absolutely nothing to do with what Nynaeve said just prior to that. The two things are disconnected. Bizarrely, it echoes surrendering to Saidar, but why exactly would you bring that up now? It's also very telling that Egwene is the first character we meet and are introduced to. The showrunner has Egwene as his pet character, which is unfortunate as it means he attempts to front-load a lot of her development, which shouldn't come until much further in. Remember that Egwene in the books is a horrible, immature, prideful person, and it isn't until pretty late in the series that she matures and becomes a somewhat decent human being who doesn't think that she is better than everyone else purely on account of being able to channel. Number 7. The introduction of Rand lasts 30 seconds before they make the scene about Egwene. I counted. Whenever Egwene's not on screen, all the other characters should be asking, where's Egwene? This is the first sign of Rand's entire character in the season revolving around Egwene. It's the opposite of what people used to complain about, and well, they still do, and rightly so in some cases, of female characters only existing as a sort of satellite around a male character. That is bad, that is poor character development and design, and that rings true whether we're talking about a male or a female. Number 8. Emond's Field diversity. It makes no sense for an isolated town with virtually no connections to the outside world to be as diverse as London. It is not a port, not a travel hub, not a popular destination. It is known exclusively for its pipeweed, its tobacco. Most residents of Emond's Field don't even know they are part of Andor. People like Tam, who leave then come back with an outsider wife, are very rare. I've heard the rumour that showrunners dismissed these sort of claims and said it's actually natural for it to be diverse after the breaking, with all peoples scattered around the world. Whilst that might, in theory, in our world, make sense, the breaking was a very long time ago, and the similitude of the two rivers plays an important role in the eye of the world. More than once, it is brought up how most Two Rivers folk are dark of hair and eye, somewhat tan on account of most of them being farmers who are out in the sun all day. Some of the Two Rivers folk are startled when they reach larger settlements and see how diverse humanity can be. Go back and read The Eye of the World. That happens quite a lot to the Two Rivers folk. They see these other people. They are surprised. People of all colours and types. And that is natural if you come from a very homogenous sort of place. The reason these changes were implemented into the show, the reasons they're dumb and stupid are legion. The Wheel of Time is a series that has characters from all walks of life. It is a very diverse setting. Trying to shove in diversity immediately was not at all required. Look at this line of Elida's when she first meets Rand in the first book. From the Two Rivers, with that red in his hair and grey eyes, Two Rivers people are dark of hair and eye. They seldom have such height or such skin, she adds after rolling up his coat sleeve to expose his fair skin which hadn't been tanned. The point is, Two Rivers folk should be relatively uniform, with Rand being the one who stands out. This tiny farming village being diverse as a modern city is nonsensical. Look, I don't care whether they made everyone in Emond's Field equivalent to real-world white people, black people, Asian people, whatever. The fact is they shouldn't have been diverse there, because the show itself is diverse, and that plays an important part of the journey, the exploration, and the development of our main characters. Number 9. Matt and Perin's introductions likewise focus on their relationships. Perin's being married is a bizarre change that I can only imagine came about because the writers weren't sure what to do with him, because in fairness, he doesn't have that much to do for the first couple of chapters. And they thought, oh, what about that character in the book who, when he meets her in book 4, I believe, when he goes back to the Two Rivers, he meets the girl and he's like, oh yeah, that's the girl that for a time I thought maybe I'd get married to, blah, 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 blah. They thought, what if we made it a generic tragedy? It'd be a great way to kickstart the adventure and make him miserable. Never mind the fact that it will completely alter the dynamic of his relationship with Fail later on. But then I imagine the writers expect they can make it work and make it super interesting. And more importantly, it's not going to come up. Later in Perin's development, if the show gets that far, they're just gonna ignore the fact that he had a wife that he annihilated. Judging from the quality of the writing so far. Here is a quote from someone who worked on the show. In the books, Perin is not married. In fact, the show decided to bring the ages of the villagers up by a few years in order for them to feel more mature and developed as characters and individuals. Those are Amazon, or someone on Amazon's behalf, own words. Apparently, more mature and developed just meant that Rand's entire existence revolves around Egwene. We're robbed of the three boys having very innocent, boyish outlooks, how their relationship with Moiraine develops and changes in such a drastic fashion. You have their first meeting where they are gobsmacked by this noble bearing lady, and it's like they would bend over backwards just to get a smile from her. Not because they have like a crush on her, because they're just so impressed by this handsome woman who holds herself so differently. Then you have book 4, where Rand is treating Moiraine like she's a nuisance. Number 10. My girl, you're back. I was worried that we might go more than 30 seconds without seeing or mentioning you. Instead of the threat of the looming fade haunting the boys, we get Egwene stuff, and the boys briefly discussing the war in Gildan. Would have been a lot better to actually have shown the Eyeless making an appearance and the three discuss that. Here's the thing, because you can have characters in the background mentioning Gildan, as it is hardly a driving force for our main characters. Number 11. Lan and Moiraine's introduction to the villagers. Pointlessly dramatic. Moiraine immediately outs herself as an Aes Sedai, and nobody seems bothered by an Aes Sedai showing up in the middle of the night in their tiny, remote village. Her introduction in the book was far superior, and showed one of her many sides, how she can present herself as a travelling lady. After all, it was never a lie. She said, "You may call me Alice." But I guess it's just good they weren't in the Borderlands, as Lan walking into the inn at night with his hood up would have resulted in him probably being immediately accosted, and you'd think he'd know better. Comical that Moiraine, who shouldn't feel the cold, goes to warm her hands by the fire as if she forgot she already introduced herself as Aes Sedai. She then displays zero subtlety, not something commonly associated with the Blue Aja, and gives each of our characters an obvious stare down, compared to the very innocent meeting she has with Rand in the books, which almost makes it seem as if she doesn't care about them at all. Made them come to her, instead of giving them the stink eye seconds after arriving. Number 12. Perin's scene with his 1-second wife is frustrating because Nynaeve's suggestion gives the viewer the impression that Perin is a lazy bum whilst his wife does all the work, which isn't true. There are many words you could use to describe Perin in the books. Lazy is never one of them. Perin loved smithing and was always a diligent worker who put in more than his fair share. Nynaeve might be a strict girl, but it was rare that her evaluation of the boys was unfair or inaccurate. She always read the three of them very well throughout the entire series. It's one of the reasons she was always a favourite character of mine. She often, although not always, knew the best ways to help them specifically. Number 13. Although it isn't nearly as frustrating as the following scene with Matt. Why can't the writers show the characters having a happy life? The worries of the MN Fielders were few, and introducing domestic violence, marriage issues, abusive relationships and the like, what purpose did any of that serve? There are plenty of darker issues in the series, having the beginning be gritty and, realistic, and of this tone is just bizarre and in direct contrast with the book's introduction, which is intentionally supposed to ease the reader into a familiar, comfortable environment. Then again, look at what Amazon did to Tolkien. Abel Cawthon goes from being a very able quarterstaffsman and archer and the best horse trader around to an abusive, cheating drunk. What is the point of this character assassination, other than to try and shove into us that Matt wants, to escape, that he's got darkness of his own to contend with? Horrible change. How is this going to work later on when Perin goes back and, is talking to Tam and Abel, whatever? Because we get it from multiple perspectives that Abel is an upfront guy who cares about his family, going so far as to track Matt all the way to Tar Valon. But instead, we're supposed to have Matt being Anakin or something, struggling with the darkness inside of him thanks to his abusive parents. Not interesting, not well written, stupid. Here's the thing, a lot of bad writers will insert conflict where there is no need for it, as they think it's a good way to spice up the story and hook people, because, there are no examples proving otherwise. They do not exist. Number 14. Rand's next scene is surprisingly about, guess who? Egwene. I'll stop counting every single scene like this, or this video will last until the end of time itself. Their relationship, having progressed as far as it has, is extremely bizarre and poorly written and ill-conceived. The two of them never really had that sort of love between them. It was a childhood puppy love, or whatever you want to call it. Yes, in an alternate timeline perhaps where they never left, they might have ended up together and developed a sort of love, but it was not meant to be that way. That is the point. As Min said, they were never meant for each other. And instead of just growing up and maturing and realizing that, well, now they are having some awkward breakup because of the aforementioned point of drama, and I guess the writers were like, we need to put some implied sex scenes in, which makes it all the more awkward that Rand's entire character revolves around Egwene. Whoopsie. Did you know that in an earlier draft of The Eye of the World, Rand ended up sleeping with Min much earlier? Perhaps as early, basically their first meeting. The author decided against it, as he thought the scene was lacking something. It didn't have any emotional value or impact, as I recall. Yeah, well, imagine you're a bad writer and you want to show two characters like each other. Easiest ways to essentially write them a love scene, such as the one we got. Haha, ha. Number 15. Moiraine's first proper scene with Lan gives off some weird vibes that are almost sexual in nature, or at least there's an implication there that they might be lovers or just more than friends, considering they are hopping into a bath naked and sort of giving each other the eyes. Likewise, I was disappointed with how much overt emotion Lan displays as a character. Is Lan a boring character with how stolid and stoic he is in the books? I don't think so. There are plenty of scenes where his shield cracks, his walls tumble, but not usually at all with Moiraine. After all, he shows emotions. It's just rarely in the form of smiling. Whether amusement, concern, or something else, it manifests in ways that are harder to note. And real talk, if you're going to have your first scene between them involve them both in water, why wouldn't you mention how they met all those years ago? You know, when he tossed her into a body of water. Number 16. When we finally have our Fade introduced, it is of course Egwene who notices. They don't really show that the cloak isn't moving in the wind. Would it have been so hard to have a shot of a wind chime or something, and then panning the camera down to show the Fade's cloak not touched by the wind? Apparently, yes. It's not like their cloaks being untouched by wind is a point that comes up a bunch, after all, nor would it make for disturbing imagery. Why exactly did the Fade, or Trollocs, form the dragon's fang out of dead animals? That is such a bafflingly random moment that I can only imagine the writer saw something like that in Game of Thrones in that one scene and thought it was cool, so they tried to copy it, despite it making no sense. Are there even any examples of Trollocs or Darkspawn, Shadowspawn, whatever, ever using the dragon's fang? Isn't that usually something that ignorant peasants and the Children of the Light are more like to do? I don't know. It's possible there are examples and I'm not remembering them, but either way, why? You should always ask yourself why characters are doing what they are doing. If your only reason as a writer is because it's cool or I want them to, then you gotta reevaluate something. Number 17. The attack on the village splits focus, but I understand why it was done, even if it removes the crucial character moment for Rand, where he finds out Tam is not his biological father. And yes, this does kind of come back later in a flashback because they thought that would be really clever. I think this scene would have been more effective playing out the way it did in the book. See, Rand is greatly disturbed by what he hears Tam say, and he struggles with that for at least the first 3 or 4 books, if not much longer. And you can't not show him struggling and then at the end of the season imply that he was by having a flashback to that scene. That's not how character development works. You can't just say it happened when we were there with the character a lot of the time. And the first time we see the power being weaved in the show is not very dramatic, considering how dramatic it should be. I also don't really like the way weaving is accompanied by crazy flourishing and how each thread is the same colour. Those are fairly minor points, and yes, I know some Aes Sedai are like to wiggly waggle their hands about more than others, but doesn't look good the way they did it. Number 18. Following the attack, the decision to leave the two rivers happens comically quickly, with it all being wrapped up in seconds. Moiraine is like, yeah, hey, one of you is the Dragon Reborn, by the way, let's get out of here. Never mind the fact that she just told some ignorant young people that one of them is essentially Hitler reborn. They barely even react to her claiming that. They're just like, oh, cool, I guess one of us is the dragon. There's a reason in the books Moiraine waited a very long time to bring it up and broached the subject carefully. This first episode just had to shove things in and rush because they wanted some action. You know, it's almost like the books have the perfect opening which allows for some action with the prologue. Too bad that prologue doesn't exist in the show. Not like it's important. Oh well. At least we'll always have the Billy Zane one. Genuinely, I would rather watch that at this point. That's the first episode of this travesty, at any rate. Number 19. At the ferry, the Neverborn has a staring contest with the heroes. What is it that a lot of people in the Two Rivers are known for? It's some sort of kind of like bendy, curved stick with like a string, you know, that connects the two ends. And then they put like another piece of wood and they use the string and they They shoot things from it, you know? I'm not sure what the term is. Archer. Imagine if Two Rivers folk were all great archers who could pincushion the fade. Imagine that. Imagine if there was some sort of wizard, someone who can use magic to summon balls of fire to shoot things from across a gap, from over a river. It's weird because, I vaguely remember some sort of very hidden sort of deep lore that if you kill a murderer, the Trollocs linked to it die as well. Nah. Why do that when we can copy that scene from Game of Thrones where Jon Snow's eyeballing up the Night's King as he escaped Hardhome? Also, couldn't you say that Moiraine technically broke one of the Aes Sedai vows in essentially killing that poor ferryman? Yeah, okay, maybe not, but reasonably, she would have known what would happen, and yes, I think it counts. Like, come on, Moiraine, don't be that way. Number 20. They show Moiraine restoring stamina to the horses after escaping the Trollocs, but they don't have the scene where Rand first channels. It's not like the very first time we have the Dragon Reborn seeming to channel in the series would be important. They don't even hint at it, with mentioning Bella not needing her stamina restored. Number 21. Awkward waffling about the dragon. The last one broke the world, the next one saves it. Imagine if there was some sort of, I don't know, prophecies concerning the dragon from which they could have quoted. Instead, Moiraine helpfully chimes in that the dragon will be all of those things and none of those things, which doesn't actually make sense. That's the same level of writing as expect the unexpected. Number 22. You don't listen to the wind, Egwene. It is the wind that listens to you. This is such a poorly written line that I could probably spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes talking about this one line. It is supposed to sound deep or dramatic. It's meant to have some sort of cool ring to it, like, I'm not trapped in here with you, you're trapped in here with me. But that line actually makes sense. This one doesn't. When you actually stop and think about it, it doesn't make a lick of sense, metaphorically or otherwise. Wisdoms listen to the wind so they can predict the weather. Using the power does not involve forcing the power to respond to you. What a goofy line. Reminds me of Star Trek, Picard, Season 2, wherein Picard would just wax poetic and waffle on about stars and skies and speak in a manner no human being ever has. Just awful. Such a simple thing, and yet emblematic of the horrid writing in this show. How can you mess up writing when you're literally adapting from something which has the writing already done? You don't even need to come up with your own garbage. Number 23. This one is a minor point, but come on, the first time Perin meets wolves and they are tiny little dogs. I know, it's a lot easier to shoot with dogs than wolves, I get that, but it's comically tiny. It's like, have you ever seen a wolf? I mean, you can research it in 30 seconds, like go, how big is a wolf? They don't even try and make it look bigger with, I don't know, forced perspective or anything as it licks at Perin's wound. It's as high as his knee. Show them from a distance, use forced perspective, use a prosthetic leg that's scaled down to make the dog look bigger. Considering how important wolves are to Perin's character, their first introduction should be somewhat more impressive than some tiny little dogs staring at him awkwardly. It's like you wouldn't even know they're wolves. Number 24. Lan sort of forgot about his ability to sense darkspawn. Instead of the Trollocs slowly gaining on them in an endurance race, they literally pop up out of thin air, patiently wait for Egwene to notice them before attacking. At that point, don't mention Lan's ability as a warder to detect shadow spawn. Surely, if you're promptly going to ignore it. Number 25. My first issue with Shadar Logoff is simply that they don't do a good job of explaining the evil within the city has nothing to do with shadow spawn. Indeed, that it was evil to match the Dark One, fighting fire with fire. both evil, but distinct from one another. It's quite a recurring theme throughout the Wheel of Time that almost all of the evil in the series is born from mankind. Trollocs, made by men. Dark Friends, they're all men. And women, but you know what I mean. I could also point out that it removes some of the escalation. Rand and Co. should have visited several towns, each larger than the last, before seeing the huge city that was Aradol. Instead, it's their first step after the two rivers that we see. It's basically right next to it, and yet none of them knew about it. Number 30 minus 4. Mat just stumbling across the ruby-hilted dagger is an inexplicably bizarre change made for pacing. Cutting out Mordeth is unfortunate. Even ignoring the role he plays in Mat finding the dagger, Mordeth becomes a major antagonist throughout the series after he melds with Padan Fain. Oh, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna give us like a flashback in season 2 where it's like, oh yeah, this happened, we just didn't show it because we're stupid. And I know we don't see it happening in the books, but you can't just cut Mordeth and then go back to the fact and pretend that he existed. Much of this is the result of we don't have time. It's not important, right? Mat can just find it on the floor and pick it up, which I find unfortunate indeed. Number 27. Cutting out Elias from Perin's early scenes is horrific, considering how important he is giving up information to Perin. Whilst it can certainly come from other sources, the character is fairly popular, and he does return later. Considering they cut him and then put in their own original things, I don't buy time as an excuse for this. It's not like, oh, it's really hard to compress this massive book into a couple of episodes. I would buy that if they didn't cut stuff and then shove in their original crap. Cutting stuff? Sure. Cutting it because you wanted to shove in something worse? No. Number 28. Tom's cloak being reduced to a few patches inside his coat is a little silly, but not surprising. More bizarre is how dirty he is. Instead of having a meticulously maintained and expensive harp and flute, he has some dingy old guitar or something. There's nothing about him that marks a gleeman as something villagers would be excited about. He looks like a hobo who started singing. Storytellers, gleemen, bards. Pretty important in the setting considering how much verbal history is made. And, oh, it's not like prophecies and history and stories are important. The main distinguishing thing about Tom's appearance in the books, what would you say it is? His cloak? Or his moustaches? Yeah, we can't have those because they might look silly. Tom should have been here from the very first episodes, but here he is. Along with his late introduction, we had Baal Doman's intro skipped entirely, along with the Tower of Genji, which would have made a cool visual, but we can't have that now, can we? Number 29. One issue we have with the removal of Tom's initial introduction is it means he has no real reason to be caught up in the adventures of the others. It is a classic case of them cutting him from the initial introduction, no doubt thinking there's too many characters, not enough time. Same reason Nynaeve doesn't leave the village with them, but without realising the consequences it has down the line. Also, Tom stealing from Mat and being so outwardly antagonistic is bizarre. See, here's the thing. Gleemen rely on charity for the most part. Being a thief is not going to win him any favours whatsoever. Not sure why they changed his character up so much, especially considering how popular a character he is at that. I'm sure they thought they could do better. You know, the writers of Wheel of Time, the show, who brought us other such marvels of the media world, such as Uncharted, the game, the movie, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Chuck. Why make their own fantasy epic when they can take a beloved one and improve upon it? What was it Moiraine said at the start of episode 1? The arrogance. The hubris, in fact. Number 30. We are halfway through my list. Oh boy. Still here? Well, Rand and Mat's interactions with the Dark Friend. All I can really say is, why? They were perfectly good encounters in the books, many of them. Do you need all of them in the show? By no means. Cut it down for television. But you still have a number, a selection to choose from. You could even combine bits from that one, bits from that one. Instead, they made their own one, which isn't as good. In particular, Rand's escape through the door is incredibly awkward compared to the much superior lightning strike that he inadvertently uses to escape a similar situation in the books. Number 31. Can you hear those birds singing outside? If so, I apologise, but that gives you an idea of how long this is taking. The early introduction of Logain is one thing I can somewhat get behind. He is an important character, and the explanations of his capture and gentling are both interesting and useful as storytelling devices. It is information we need to know in regards to male channelers. That said, going back to point number 4, we should have skipped that whole scene at the start with Liandrin entirely, as it is rendered somewhat redundant by what happens here. The Aes Sedai wearing colour-coded robes is a little funny, when typically they're meant to use shawls, which they don't exactly use all the time, but it's not really a problem. If anything, my only issue is that given this, they should have had Nynaeve wearing yellow to foreshadow her future allegiance instead of green. She's not of the Battle Ajah, after all. Introducing Alana early is perhaps a wise move too, all things considered, but then, number 32. For starters, there is little reason for Logain to be in a fancy metal cage. Binding him in air works just as well, and for the sake of moving him, any contraption's fine. They mention during his shielding that Moiraine can't see the weaves, because of course, if you can use saidar, you can't see saidin, and vice versa. I seem to recall one of the showrunners, or writers, whoever, remarking that Logain didn't see Nynaeve's weaves, he just saw the results of it. But that doesn't make sense, considering Moiraine used explicit verbiage, which he then repeated. That was describing the amount and the glow of the one power, not the results of the weave. That and he covered his eyes from the glow of her going Super Saiyan, which he should not have been able to see. At most, he might have felt some hair on his arms, standing up or whatever, goosebumps. This is all largely building to the red herring of Nynaeve being the dragon, obviously. But ignoring all that, how did Perin see his weave and know to defend against it? Because he shoots some sort of air projectile, and then she sacrifices herself to save Moiraine and Liandrin. There's absolutely no excuse for that. It wasn't like a fireball. It appears to be pure energy, if not air. Either way, that's what we call a plot hole. And it could have easily been rectified. She could have seen something, like boring through his cage, and realised that he is shooting some sort of force at them, and even if she can't see it, she can see the results it is having on the surroundings. But, I had to think for 2 seconds to come up with that. You expect Hollywood writers to spend 2 seconds coming up with something to avoid a plot hole? You're out of your mind, buddy boy. Finally, as strong as Nynaeve is in the power, her strength is rated at 3, the highest possible for a woman being 1. There are only 6 women noted to be stronger than her in the entire series. At any rate, strong as she is, Logain's strength is rated at ++2, which is 7 steps above Nynaeve. Keep in mind, that isn't how good they are, it just means the amount of the one power they can draw on at their maximum capacity, with the highest possible level being ++1, only 1 step above Logain. In other words, even if Logain could somehow feel how much of the power Nynaeve held, it shouldn't be that impressive to him, as it's still steps below what he is able to do. It would only be impressive in the sense that she is an extremely powerful female channeler. Number 33. The time skip of 1 month later, after showing a warder losing his Aes Sedai, irked me, because it is a pretty big deal when a warder loses the Aes Sedai. But for the purposes of the show, they more or less halt any development with this warder and anyone else during these 30 days. Nothing important happened, everyone just walked in a straight line. And I don't buy it. They should have either shown him going completely berserk or having him vanish to go in suicide by Trollocs in the Blight. A month is a long time, but apparently nothing interesting happened during that time. Classic TV, bad writing trope, especially considering how that character ends up. Number 34. Tar Valon is rather disappointing to look at. And yes, you might be complaining about the way I'm pronouncing it. And yes, I know technically it's pronounced Tarvalon or Tarvalon. I know the correct pronunciation, I just don't really care. It's like GIF and GIF. I'm going to say Tar Valon because that's what sounds good to me. And yes, Tar Valon is clearly like a reference to Avalon from King Arthur. But moving on, there's nothing really to indicate that it was Ogier work. See, Ogier stonemasonry, or whatever you want to call it, their craftsmanship, it's meant to be like an almost organic, flowing building that looks impossible. But in the show, it just looks like a phallic blob above a bunch of normal houses and buildings. And of course, this is all ignoring the point that we skipped Camelin and replaced it with Tar Valon, which is a horrid choice. Number 35. See, cutting out Camelin is unforgivable. Potentially the biggest mistake of the entire series. What was the reason? So that most of episode 5, the majority of the middle part of the show, can be original donut steel characters who serve no purpose as they die within the same episode and then just give Lan an excuse to twist his nipples because he's sad? How many major characters did we lose out on because of that? Let's see. When Rand falls into the palace gardens, he meets Elaine, Garwin, Galad, his brother, Gareth Bryn, Elida, and of course, Morghese Trakand. These are all major characters who span the entire series. There are so many important elements established during that one chapter, I can't even list them all here. It is where Rand gets his very first look at how lords behave. Very important, not just for his interactions in the Great Hunt, but of course, going on to become the Dragon for True. Beyond all that, Elaine is one of the most important main characters. Skipping her introduction here is awful. Done purely, I imagine, because she doesn't have much to do until season 2, I suppose, when she meets Egwene and co at the Tower. Never mind the fact that her relationship with Egwene and co would be fundamentally completely different had she not already met Rand. Number 36. Perin and Egwene being captured by the White Cloaks. Where to begin? Cutting out Elias is a baffling choice considering how important he is with kicking off Perin's initial understanding of being a wolf brother. Perhaps more important, however, is the way they are caught by the White Cloaks. Perin kills some in a rage, having that killing haunting him throughout the entire series, right through to the end. Do you think that could be important? Nah. Number 37. The scene of Logan'S capture features the crowd gasping at the knowledge of a dead Aes Sedai. Judging from the empty saddle and empty boots, but considering how the White Tower operates, it seems unlikely to me they would parade the fact that an Aes Sedai, any Aes Sedai, was killed. With how obsessed the White Tower is with their image, you'd imagine they would treat Aes Sedai like UNSC Spartans. They never die, they are only missing in action. Padan Fain showing up in this scene is a little bizarre too. He shows up throughout the series in tiny little bits to be like, "Oh, I'm stalking you," hinting at things, but they didn't show him in Shadar Logoth at all, unless maybe I missed it. It's no real issue, it's just a strange thing to include when you skipped Mordith. Number 38. I do not understand why the Dragon's Fang was scrawled on Swan's home and was burnt down. If she's in Tyr, it's more likely that had someone known she could channel, they would have just reported her and she would have been sent off quietly to the White Tower. No? Also, as an aside, Is that supposed to be the Stone of Tyr in the background, do you think? Fundamentally, though, I have no real issues with this scene as an introduction to Swan, despite it being an original one. In fact, I almost think it's a nice way to introduce the character with a cold open. Number 39. Moiraine having a Tirangriel used as a form of gateway or whatever isn't outrageous a concept, but the fact that it's not even hidden seems a little odd. Could any Aes Sedai just sense what it is? Maybe. But leaving it out in the open unsupervised is dangerous. See, here's the thing. I know the Aes Sedai don't generally clean with the one power in the White Tower, but there are so many situations where another sister could have gone into Moiraine's quarters and been channeling. Maybe one of the red is there to snoop around. Who knows? They do that sort of stuff. Maybe one of the black. And she's just left it there. Moiraine and Swan were almost certainly pillow friends. But with the way this scene is given to us, they bring in Moiraine's relationship with Tom. If they do that, viewers might get confused and think that she's cheating on Swan. They awkwardly shoehorn in Swan dreaming about the Dark One being at the eye of the world, because we need some reason for them to go there. So they came up with the silliest reason they could think of. You know what's funny? They didn't have Egwene be the one who dreamed that. You know, Egwene, the dreamer, and Egwene, the writer's pet. I guess they forgot about that. Moiraine then remarks that whatever comes between the dragon and the Dark One will die, which doesn't really make sense. That's no prophecy, and she herself just doubted the prophecies. It's there purely to tell us some drama, not to generate drama in any authentic manner, but just to be like, oh no, the main characters might die. That will definitely happen. Suspense. We call that false tension. But then everything else with the whole mystery of who is the dragon is awful and gives me a headache. 4-0. The eye of the world being turned into the Dark One's prison is bizarre. The consequences of bringing the dragon to Sheol Ghul at this point in time should have been severe. Originally, the Eye of the World was effectively a huge reservoir of seething, the male half of the power, which many Aes Sedai gave their lives to create, seething free of the taint. You might even argue that the Eye of the World plays a rather important part in inspiring Rand later on in the cleansing of seething. But yes, the Eye of the World was sought out by Dark Friends and Awakened Forsaken. But now, apparently, it just is the Dark One's prison. They want to go there and dab on him because Swan is now a dreamer and thinks that he's weak. If she isn't a dreamer, that's nothing to go on. Either way, they should have realized it's almost certainly a trap. This is all a really badly written, ham-fisted way to just move events along to where they kind of need to be after these egregious changes. The threat of the Dark One, by the way, isn't Trollocs, is that he will break the Wheel of Time itself. Number 41. Matt's exit from the show is incredibly awkward. From what I understand, they filmed the first 6 episodes or so, then COVID happened, they finally got back to filming. The actor for Matt did not return, so in the show they got around this by showing footage of him standing still whilst everyone screams at him. Never mind the fact that at this point they think he's the dragon or could be the dragon. Leaving him behind could potentially be disastrous because they're going there with just some random dudes. Just imagine, had they not adopted that whole "who is the dragon" mystery, they could have easily averted this problem by saying Matt is too sick to come, we will leave him in Tar Valon to recover. Him staying behind wouldn't in theory matter. I understand this is a technical issue, less of a writing one, but there must have been a better solution to this, and it's a sign of how, if they hadn't been writing stupid things, this wouldn't have happened. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Number 42. It is the answer, but not the answer for this. However, whilst I don't know the question which 42 answers, I do know the question and the answer for this action scene with Tigraine. The question is why. The answer is stupid. I get what they were going for, but would it have been so hard to find someone who actually knows how to use spears in an impressive manner, instead of just having her fly around like Superman grabbing capes? That's not how capes nor physics work. Also, Tigraine should be golden-haired. She was not a native Aiel. That's kind of the point. Why does she look Aiel? And if she looks this way, well, are you gonna have Elaine and Gawain and like, what are they gonna look like? Why does she lower her veil and still kill? Yeah, I know, adopted into Aiel, but in the show, she's like a native Aiel, and either way, it's a pretty big no-no. Having her killed instead of just dying also seems like a pointless change. In fact, the whole scene is just sort of stupid when you consider they don't have Rand's agonizing over the fact that he knows Tam's not his biological father throughout the Eye of the World, so why bother including this scene to reveal it awkwardly? Stupid, again, is the answer, and they probably wanted some sort of girl power scene to show how cool and tough the Aiel maidens are. Which is fine, in the sense that the Aiel maidens are cool, they are tough, they are amazing fighters. But you don't need to come up with this rubbish scene to show that. And they aren't cool and tough because they can fly around and defy physics. They are cool and tough because they have been trained in how to use the spear. Number 43.
Do you really think Matt's ready for what lies ahead?
Okay, then why did you bring him here at all? Galaxy brain. And then Loyal remarks that it's impossible to open it because you can't use the power. How are you going to get out? There's literally no difference between opening the gate they just entered and opening the one they want to exit by. It's opened in literally the exact same way. You take a leaf, you dunk it. Very shoddily written excuses for why they have to ditch Matt. They literally could have opened it back up, grabbed him by his ear, and pulled him in. Number 44. More character assassination of Matt. There's a darkness within him. I already know what choice he'd make. I can't let him face the Dark One. Okay, so what's the plan? Let's assume that Matt is the dragon. What was the plan here, Moiraine? Just let things explode? Remember how Rand's own hardening became such a worrying factor for Cadsuane, amongst many others? Well, at least they seem to have some attempts to resolve it. Moiraine's idea is, what? She's gonna go and crump on the Dark One herself? Number 45. Oh boy, buckle up, because this is where things start getting super demented. Let's do several quick fire points as one, shall we? Faldara and Tarwin's Gap being 10 feet away from each other is pretty dumb. Why are most of the Borderlanders all Asian? Purely based on their names? That's absurd. One of the big points in Wheel of Time was how cultures were so shook up and different from what we know in our lifetime. We'll touch a bit more on vaguely Asian name equals Asian character momentarily though. Numero 46. Faldara has and always will be able to protect its own. Character assassination once again, this time of Agulmar. It begins. See, he's a man who holds a deep respect for Aes Sedai, and in the books, his welcome to them is the exact opposite. He's relieved that Aes Sedai, any Aes Sedai, have finally appeared. I can only speculate as to why this was done in the show, and it is what we call an avalanche of problems. One tiny teeny pebble that snowballs into a catastrophe so abhor that it makes you wonder if the writers actively despised the original work and wanted to sabotage and piss all over it, because that is what they have done. Number 47. Agulmar's sister doesn't need to exist within the show because her character is pointless. If they wanted to remark on how weak channelers can't become Aes Sedai, there are many ways to do it. Say, I don't know, could it be there is a rather major character who shows up many times and even has, like, her own kind of adventure going on? She was Elaine's mother, maybe? Just another largely original character with a pointless existence. Then Moiraine remarks that the Red Udger need to hunt down Matt? What? Why? He can't channel. Moiraine knows how the Red Ajah in the show are obnoxious, secret police. They're just catch-all man-hating, and she wants them to go and, like, punch Matt. Never mind the whole issue of the dragon being a man. If it's a woman, that completely changes everything, because a woman wouldn't go insane from touching the source. But, oh well. Number 48. The name Min sounds vaguely Asian, right? So Min must be Asian. Toss her in the Borderlands with all those other Asians. I imagine that's how the absurd conversation went. For starters, Min is neither from the Borderlands, nor is she ever described as Asian, and her name is Elmindrida. See, I don't ostensibly object to them casting Asians as Lan and Min. It's the fact that the sort of reasoning behind it drives me insane. Lan has, like, a hachimaki, and maybe he uses a katana, like he has a top knot. Haha, Asians go brrrr. Number 49. Min, as a whole, what a rubbish introduction for a popular, important character. A character I quite like too. She doesn't even interact with Rand in the scene. None of her personality comes through. Would you gather from this scene that she is a playful, teasing tomboy who likes older men, not scruffy sheepherders? She doesn't enjoy the gift she has in what can be described as foretelling. They don't even bother to use the visions she saw in the books. For the most part, they just made up their own ones. They put in something about the Camelin seat being Moiraine's downfall, which I anticipate gives them room in the future to write something that I will be complaining about in a few years, no doubt about it. Number 50. Moiraine remarks that Min can see the future, and then says, "Any of you who aren't the dragon will die, lol," even though Min literally just told her otherwise. She knows that Min's prophecies come true, which, ergo, means that her random outburst for the sake of forced melodrama that the non-dragons will die, she herself knows that's wrong. This is stupid. It's a plot hole. Imagine being this dumb. You might think that so many of these points are just, well, the book was different, stop comparing them, it's not meant to be the book, it's meant to be like the books, it's based on the books, but it's not the books. But this is straight up garbage writing with a character contradicting herself immediately, even if you ignore every other point, every 60 other points in this video. This point alone is enough to highlight the stupid writing from people who apparently can't write themselves out of a paper bag. 51. Perin being horny for Egwene isn't just another case of everyone loves Rhaegwayne or Egwainemund, but it's absolute nonsense for his character. Of course he loves her. As a sister, as a friend. Him having the hots for her in the show is just brought up for the melodrama of this one scene, basically, and because the writers don't seem to have any idea of what to do with Perin, as if Perin is the most complicated and nuanced of characters in the Wheel of Time. Spoilers, he isn't. He has a fully fleshed out character arc. Where is his struggle with the wolves, his distaste but aptitude for violence? Yeah, nobody liked any of that. Let's just make it a love triangle, or whatever the hell this tripe is. Embarrassing. Also, Perin isn't meant to be taller than Rand. You know, it's sort of the number one defining trait of Rand's character to most initial onlookers, is that he is noticeably taller than just about everyone. And that is used as a constant metric to define him throughout the series. They say, this guy's almost as tall as Rand, for example. Isn't it funny how they aged everyone up because they wanted to make them seem more mature, and here they are acting like 13-year-olds. Number 52. I'm tired, let it end. Rand's revelation that he's the dragon is a goofy scene. They hid the stuff with Dan remarking on Rand's birth from us because, why? Once again, melodrama. Also, isn't it weird that Rand finds the void when he's so clearly distressed and thinking about this? I don't quite understand that. And then Min is mean. Mean Min. Because I guess her being playful is bad? And she doesn't even remark on how she is not for you, you are not for her. You know, something that's pretty damn important for Rand's development. Also, Min doesn't really see the past. She sees omens of what is to come. So why, when she looked at Tam, did she see that? Why did she see Tam? Couldn't they have just phrased it differently? Like, I saw a dragon coiled about him. Lol. 53. I need food. Moiraine leaving Lan behind when she takes Rand to the Eye is really stupid. What's the goal here? To save Lan from dying because she assumes everyone but Rand and maybe Rand will die. Gee, imagine if we hadn't spent an entire episode fixating on Warder's post-Aes Sedai death. Moiraine hasn't taken any measures at this point in the show to ensure Lan's bond passes on to another. So she dies, in theory, Lan goes bananas, rides into the Blight, which is right next to where he is, and dies as well. 10 out of 10 planning from Galaxy Brain Moiraine. Number 54. I'm tired. Just, oh boy, here we go. Lews Theron's buddy in this scene somehow conveniently assumes that the power would be corrupted. Why doesn't she want to help him? Because she thinks that Saidar and Saidin will both be corrupted. So what's the alternative here, lady? Just let Shaitan pop out and teabag the world? Good plan! The fact that she calls Lews Theron Dragon Reborn just makes it obvious they didn't read the books. Lews Theron isn't the Dragon Reborn. All was shattered, and all but memory lost, one memory above all others, of him who brought the shadow and the breaking of the world, and him they named Dragon. Incidentally, Lews Theron mentioning Camelin is stupid. The Amelin seat didn't exist back then. Camelin was probably the first person to ever channel, but whatever. 55. I'm dying. Moiraine having, effectively, the Eye of the World in Sangreal form is odd. Where exactly did she get something that would be one of the most powerful Sa'angreal ever created? Surely on par with Kalandor, at the very least. She just kept it in her pocket. It's not like that would need any backstory where it came from. Do you think it's meant to be the fat bald man, Angreal? Probably not, but I can definitely see that playing the role of it in the show. Number 56. There are so many things wrong about the Tarwin's Gap battle. Agulmar dying is almost the least of them. Like, I'm feeling completely drained and exhausted, and it's not just because I've been recording this for like, I don't know, 2 hours or something at this point. Considering he's one of the great captains, why did he have the universe brain idea to do nothing but pew-pew a few crossbows? Not even in ranks or lines, just stand there and pew-pew. Compare his defense to Ituralder's defense in the last couple of books. I forget which book exactly, maybe number 12 or whatever. It makes Agulmar look like a complete dimwit. Also, Agulmar says... Do you know what he says? He says, "Fire!" to command crossbows. Another sign that the writers didn't spend the 5 seconds they could have to research anything. We say fire because firearms used flames to ignite powder. Crossbows do not use gunpowder. They do not use fire. They are pulleys and ropes and mechanisms that do not involve that at all. If guns existed, you can say you might fire a bow, as it's a sort of general term at that point. Guns do not exist, for the most part, in Wheel of Time's world. In the Age of Legends, sure, like they have shock sticks, maybe they have firearms too. The correct term, though, would be loose. But what do you expect? This sloppy crap just shows the level of care and talent working on this. They have channelers. Why didn't they use them? I don't know, at Tarwin's Gap. Stick the ladies on the walls and have them hurl out fireballs, perhaps. Why wait until after every man has been slaughtered for the Trollocs to consume before starting to use your strongest weapon? If 5 linked channelers, presumably 3 of which are so weak they wouldn't even be accepted in the White Tower, are strong enough to defeat 20,000 Trollocs with Nynaeve and Egwene participating, then Trollocs are literally a non-issue at that point. You can literally have one full Aes Sedai link with any rubbish channelers who, like, you know, any women who have the spark, and guess what? No amount of Trollocs would be an issue. The only way to stop that army is to stop the Dark One himself. Yeah, that was a lie, wasn't it, Moiraine? Actually, all you needed was Nynaeve, Egwene, and some Z-tier channelers. I don't think burning out from overexerting yourself in the one power literally means burning your face off, but whatever. That's a very small nitpick, but I thought I'd mention it because I thought it was funny. And I don't think you can heal being burnt out. If someone was severed, gentled, such as Logain, yes, but if someone burns themselves out, no. They don't care, though, about rules or logic or anything. They just wanted a fake-out death because, oh no, drama. Number 57. We're close. The symbol of the Aes Sedai is not the Eye of the World. Also, it's very odd that Ishamael uses what is effectively the testing ter'angreal from the White Tower to mess with Rand. It's incredibly stupid that his entire motivation to defy the Dark One boils down to Egwene is a strong woman. She don't need no man. Coming full circle to the point I made near the start, everything Rand does is about Egwene. He has no character, no personality beyond that. Ishamael tells him, don't fight the power, let it flow through you. Rand's using saidin, not saidar. You have to fight saidin. That's sort of the whole point. Did Ishamael intentionally give him wrong advice because he wanted him to be consumed by saidin? I don't know. Maybe, but that's not the feel of that scene. 58. You are close. Now, so very close to me. Good lord, I forgot about the Horn of Valir. The fact that it was hidden under a chair. Imagine the Great Hunt coming down to that, huh? Where it could have easily been found. It takes one person in all of history to let that rumor slip, compared to it being sealed at the Eye of the World, untouchable, under saidin pools by ancient Aes Sedai, along with the dragon banner, where nobody could possibly find it. Hence, the Great Hunt. Not stick this under your chair for later. Number 59. Abandon all delusions of control. Ostensibly, the reason they gave Rand virtually nothing to do and robbing him of what he does in the books here at the end is because they wanted everyone to have something to do. Apart from Matrim Corthan. Which is, wow, what an excuse. Why even lie? Why not just tell the truth and say what you mean? You wanted to give Rand's feet to Egwene, because that's the truth here. Here, I'll give you an alternate version of how the events of the finale can take place and give everyone something to do. And I'm coming up with this on the fly. I didn't plan or think about this. I didn't spend hours in a writer's room. Here it is. Once they reach the Eye of the World, Balthamel, or however you pronounce it, and Aginor show up. Rand travels to Tarwin's Gap, as in the books, and destroys the army, and then confronts Ishamael. Meanwhile, Moiraine, Nynaeve, Egwene, Lan, Perin, and, I guess, Mat confront the two Forsaken. Both are male channelers, so they have no way of knowing the strength of the females here. Have them get cocky. They win initially. They use their mastery of ancient weaves, and then they split up. Aginor looks for Rand. He wonders where he went, because he can't tell where he travelled to. Balthamel searches the eye. Then you have all the females stand up and join in a circle, and they defeat Balthamel. And here's the thing, having Nynaeve, Egwene, and Moiraine join in a circle and defeating a Forsaken is more believable than Nynaeve, Egwene, and some randos defeating 20,000 Trollocs. Aginor is significantly more powerful than Balthamel, but not exactly a fighter. Lan and Perin, with the help of the Green Man, should be able to kill him if they find some way to, I don't know, distract or disable his channeling. Maybe even with help from the wolves, but you don't really need that. Again, there's probably better ways to do it. Maybe you come up with some way where the Green Man had some way to stop channeling that he can use, like how the steadings work. It might be a bit silly, but there are ways to come up with it. And just imagine how much better that would be. Aginor is a fairly powerful channeler, but you have him defeated by Lan and Perin. Meanwhile, Balthamel is defeated by the ladies who are joined in a circle, which should be well within their capabilities, considering that Nynaeve is able to stand toe-to-toe with Forsaken later in the series. Now, granted, not the really powerful ones, and they have much more experience with channeling, but, you know, it could happen. They can't see the weaves, they wouldn't know they've joined in a circle. It works. Number 60... Perin, meanwhile, gets to do something, huh? They didn't even give him his axe that he brought with him from the Two Rivers. It's not as if that axe is an important part of his character, though, to be fair. What was it that, I want to say Elias said to him? Keep the axe until you find that you are no longer disgusted with its use. Something along the lines of that. It's been a while since I read the quote, but, you know, that's sarcasm, by the way. The axe is a crucial part of Perin. Did they kill Uno in that scene, by the way? I hope not, but at least he won't be butchered by the writers later. Also, yes, I know it's Padan Fain and Two Fades, but Loyal being shanked by him? Come on. I suppose show Ogier are barely taller than people, so whatever, but it's kind of another point that Ogier are not pushovers. Yes, I know, it's Fades and Padan Fain, but come on. You're kind of doing my boy dirty here. Loyal is quite a fearsome fighter, and here they just show him on the floor like, "Save me, Perin! I've been stabbed in the anus." Instead, Perin just stands around in the scene. Yeah, so much for giving him something to do, Pretty much what he does the entire season. Perin stands there. Number 61. I can taste freedom. How about that ending? Moiraine's logic of the Quendiar, meaning this wasn't the last battle, might be sound, but as a viewer without prior knowledge, there is zero explanation as to what she's going on about, because guess what? They never mentioned Quendiar. Rand is waddling off because he'll, I don't know, he'll end up in the Aiel Waste, the Blight, or he's gonna go to the Stone of Tyr? Then we have the arrival of the Seanchan, who apparently decide to use the mighty power of Domani to unleash a tsunami upon a single child. No leashes, by the way, because the leash and collar as a visual motif isn't exactly immediately obvious and effective as to what's going on. There's cliffs behind that child, so those waves aren't going anywhere. What? Why are the Seanchan just going all Leviathan on some kid? Imagine writing a scene and thinking it's super badass, but then it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And that about sums it up. The Wheel of Time by Amazon. The stupidest thing I've ever seen. And season 2, oh boy, you know what they're doing? Ostensibly, they are compressing books 2 and 3 and combining them because they were like, Book 2's too much Rand, we need the other characters to do more stuff. Again, that's not what you mean. You don't care about, like, Perin and Matt. You just want the story to be Egwene. So season 2 is gonna be, like, 50% Egwene at Hogwarts or something horrific like that. I'm out. Catch you when season 2 rolls around and I have a seizure and die.